The quiet storm. The sun had just begun to rise over Los Altos hills, casting a golden hue over the Pichai residence. Inside, Sundar Pichai sat at the kitchen table, sipping his morning tea, preparing for another day of leading one of the world's most influential tech companies. His son, Kiran, a 16-year-old high school student, entered the kitchen, his face pale and eyes avoiding contact. "Good morning, Kiran," Sundar greeted, noticing his son's unusual demeanor. "Morning, Dad," Kiran mumbled, grabbing a piece of toast before heading out the door. Sundar watched him leave, concern etched on his face. He sensed something was amiss but decided to give his son space, hoping it was just teenage moodiness. Later, that day, Sundar received a call from the school counselor. Kiran had been involved in an incident. "Mr. Pichai, Kiran was found in the locker room, his belongings vandalized. It appears he's been the target of bullying," the counselor explained. Sundar's heart sank. He had always emphasized humility and kindness, values he held dear from his own upbringing in India. That evening, Sundar sat down with Kiran. "Son, I heard about what happened. Do you want to talk about it?" Kiran hesitated, then nodded. "They say I'm a spoiled rich kid, that I think I'm better than everyone because of who you are." Sundar felt a mix of anger and sadness. He knew the challenges of being in the public eye, but he hadn't anticipated the impact on his children. "Remember, Kiran, our worth isn't defined by others' opinions. It's our actions that matter," Sundar advised. The next day, Sundar visited the school, not as the CEO of a tech giant, but as a concerned father. He met with the principal and teachers, discussing ways to foster a more inclusive environment. He also addressed the student body, sharing his own experiences of growing up in a modest home, emphasizing the importance of empathy and respect. The students listened intently, many realizing the weight of their actions. As Sundar concluded his speech, he looked at Kiran, who stood among his peers, a newfound confidence in his eyes. But just as things seemed to settle, an anonymous message appeared on the school's online forum. "He's just putting on a show. People like him will never understand us." Sundar knew the journey was far from over. The ripple effect, the rain tapped gently on the large windows of the Pichai residence that Sunday evening, a soft rhythm against the silence in the living room. Sundar sat in his usual armchair, a half-read book resting in his lap, but his eyes weren't on the pages. They stared into the dim glow of the fireplace, lost in thought. He couldn't stop thinking about that message. One single sentence posted on the school's forum had stirred something deeper than anger. It brought back memories of his own past. The dusty streets of Chennai, the crowded classrooms, the countless moments when he had been overlooked, judged, or underestimated because of where he came from. He knew what it felt like to be less than in someone else's eyes. Kiran sat across from him on the couch, trying to focus on a school assignment but constantly glancing at his phone. Even though the school had taken down the post quickly, it had already been shared among students, spreading like wildfire. Some had laughed, others had defended him, most had stayed quiet. The silence stung more than anything. "Dad," Kiran finally said, his voice small, "am I just pretending to? Is all this just fake? I don't even know how to act anymore. If I speak up, they say I'm arrogant. If I stay quiet, they say I'm weak." Sundar looked at his son, really looked at him. The slump in his shoulders, the sadness. In his eyes, the quiet desperation of a teenager caught in a storm too big for him. He placed the book aside and leaned forward. "Kiran, you're not pretending. You're figuring it out. That's what being young is. And even adults get it wrong. I do too. But what matters is who you choose to be when no one's watching. When the noise fades and it's just you, your values, your choices." Kiran nodded slowly, unsure but comforted. He wanted to believe his father, but the world at school felt so much louder than the truth inside him. The next morning, Sundar made an unusual decision. He cleared his calendar for the week. No board meetings, no keynote rehearsals, no press calls. He sent a quiet message to his assistant. "Family first this week. Everything else can wait." Then he called Kiran's school and asked to meet with the student council and faculty together. He wanted to talk, not as a CEO, but as a father, and more importantly, as someone who understood what it meant to be invisible and misunderstood. The school reluctantly agreed. They weren't used to having global tech leaders request time with students, especially under circumstances like this. But Sundar didn't want press. He didn't want headlines. He wanted change. On Wednesday, Sundar walked into the school auditorium. It wasn't a grand event. No camera crews, no media, just rows of curious students and a few skeptical teachers. The room was filled with tension. Some students whispered when he entered, others sat stiffly, unsure why he was even there. Sundar stood in front of them, not behind a podium but in the center of the floor. His voice was calm, gentle. "I grew up in a 2-room apartment in India," he began. "My brother and I studied by the light of kerosene lamps because we didn't always have electricity. I didn't touch a computer until I was in college. I was just a boy with dreams and a bicycle." A few students exchanged surprised glances. That wasn't what they had expected. "People assume things about you when they see your title, or your clothes, or the car you drive," Sundar continued. "But those things are just noise. Real strength isn't in what you own. It's in how you treat people who can't give you anything in return." There was silence. Not the awkward kind, but the thoughtful kind. Sundar went on to speak about empathy, about the invisible battles people fight and how quick judgments can become weapons when we don't stop to understand each other. Then he paused. "But this isn't about me," he said. "It's about the culture we create in schools, the places where we grow, and whether we choose to build people up or tear them down because they're different." He didn't name names. He didn't talk about Kiran. He didn't need to. Everyone knew why he was there. Afterward, a few students approached him quietly. One girl said her younger brother had been bullied because he wore hand-me-down clothes. Another boy shared that he felt pressured to act tough all the time just to fit in. They spoke in whispers, unsure if it was safe to open up. Sundar listened to each one, offering no grand solutions, just a kind ear and words of encouragement. Later that evening, back at home, Kiran seemed different. Lighter somehow. Not because everything was suddenly better, but because he had seen something unexpected. He had seen people shift, if only a little. He had seen that pain shared could be pain lessened, and more importantly, he had seen his father not as a CEO but as a man who wasn't afraid to stand up when it mattered most. But just when they thought the storm had passed, an email arrived. It was anonymous, sent to Sundar's public inbox, but it had all the signs of someone close to the situation. The message was short and chilling. "You think a few kind words will fix everything? Your son isn't the only one who's been suffering. There's more to this than you know. Look deeper." Sundar read the message 3 times. Then he looked at Kiran. "We're missing something," he said quietly. Kiran frowned. "What do you mean?" Sundar didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened his laptop and began to type. If there was more beneath the surface, he was going to find it. The hidden paint. A house was quiet that night, the kind of silence that seems to deepen with each passing minute. Outside, the wind had picked up, brushing leaves against the glass, like soft warnings. Sundar sat at his desk in the study, the glow of his laptop casting a tired light on his face. The message echoed in his mind, louder than the wind. "There's more to this than you know. Look deeper." He had faced complex systems, billion-dollar decisions, global crises, yet this message left him more unsettled than any boardroom challenge. He knew it wasn't just about Kiran anymore. Something else was happening beneath the surface, and if he was going to help his son, he had to see the full picture. He leaned back and pulled up the school's public forums and archives, using only what any parent could access. He didn't want to pull rank. This had to be done quietly, carefully. He combed through old posts, scanned comment threads, and read long-forgotten student essays from online school journals. After 2 hours, a name kept resurfacing: Arav Kapoor. Student a year ahead of Kiran. He had been a straight-A student, captain of the debate team and once described by a teacher as the heart of the school. But around 6 months ago, something changed. He stopped showing up to events. His name disappeared from the honor roll. Teachers mentioned his behavior becoming erratic. Then, he vanished from all public school activity. No one talked about, him anymore. It was as if he had been erased. Sundar's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He looked at the email again. Your son isn't the only one who's been suffering. What if this wasn't about Kiran alone? What if the pain that had touched his family was part of a longer chain, one that had gone unnoticed? The next morning, Sundar met with the school counselor, Ms. Ray, under the pretense of discussing Kiran's well-being. Halfway through the conversation, he gently steered the topic. I came across the name Arav Kapoor. I was wondering if you could help me understand what happened to him. Ms. Ray paused. She looked uncomfortable, glancing toward the closed office door before answering. Arav was exceptional, kind, bright, always helping others. But things changed. He became withdrawn, angry. We tried to reach out, but he pushed everyone away. Eventually, he asked for a transfer. I haven't heard from him since. Sundar frowned. Did anything happen to cause that shift? Ms. Ray hesitated again. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. There were rumors. He had a falling out with a few popular students. It started online. Posts, jokes, even deepfake images. Cruel stuff. But there was never enough proof to take action. And then, when the school didn't act fast enough, the damage was already done. Sundar felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. The digital world, once his empire, had turned into a battleground for children like Arav and Kiran. And the worst part? No one seemed to know how to stop it. Do you know where he is now? Sundar asked quietly. I'm not sure. But I heard he transferred to a smaller private school on the edge of town. He didn't leave on good terms. That evening, Sundar brought up the name to Kiran. Arav Kapoor, Kiran repeated. Yeah, I remember him. He helped me with my science project once. Super smart. Kinda quiet, though. I always thought something weird happened, but no one talked about it. Do you think he was bullied? Sundar asked. Kiran paused, thinking. Honestly, yeah, but not the obvious kind. It was like this slow, cold thing. People started ignoring him, then they laughed behind his back. One guy even said he cried in the bathroom once after someone posted a fake photo of him. But no one did anything, including me. There was a moment of silence between father and son, heavy with guilt and realization. Maybe it's not just about stopping the bullies, Sundar said quietly. Maybe it's about finding the ones who were left behind. A few days later, Sundar did something he hadn't done in years. He visited a local school not as a speaker or leader, but as a parent with questions. After a quiet conversation with the school director, he was directed to a small sunlit art room where a boy sat alone, sketching in a notebook. It was Arav. He looked thinner than Sundar remembered from the old school photos. His eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much for his age. Hi, Arav. I'm Sundar, Kiran's father. Arav looked up, his face a mixture of surprise and caution. I remember you, he said slowly. From the news. From Google. Sundar smiled gently. I'm not here as that guy. I'm here because I think we've both seen how silence can hurt. And I think maybe you've got a story that needs to be heard. For a moment, Arav said nothing. Then he looked down at his sketch. It was a picture of a boy standing on a stage alone, shadows around him but a single light shining down. No one believed me, he said. Everyone said I was too sensitive, or that it was just jokes, even when they doctored my face onto something disgusting and sent it around. People laughed. I stopped trusting anyone, so I left. Sundar sat across from him quietly. You didn't deserve that. No one does. Arav met his eyes, and for the first time, there was a flicker of hope. Why do you care? He asked. Because the silence you felt is the same silence my son felt. And if no one stands up for the kids who go quiet, then we all fail. But it doesn't have to end this way. Arav studied him for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I'll talk. But only if I can say it in my own words, no cameras, no reporters. Deal, Sundar said, Later that night, Sundar told Kiran about his meeting with Airav. They sat in the living room again, only this time the silence felt different. Lighter, like maybe something was beginning to shift. "What if we did something together?" Kiran said, eyes wide with a spark Sundar hadn't seen in weeks. "Me, you, Airav. What if we started something to help kids who feel like they don't have a voice?" Sundar smiled slowly. "I think that's the best idea you've ever had." But just as they began to make plans, another message arrived, this time slid under their front door. A printed letter, no name, no return address. The message was simple. Be careful. Not everyone wants the truth out. The silence breaks. The letter lay on the dining table, its words still fresh in Sundar's mind. Be careful. Not everyone wants the truth out. There was no signature, no handwriting, just a sterile typeface printed on white paper, almost clinical in its coldness. But the weight behind it felt personal. Too personal. It wasn't just a warning. It was a signal. Someone was watching. Sundar looked across the table at Kiran, who was staring at the paper with a mixture of confusion and fear. They had crossed a line now. This was no longer about standing up to bullies. This was about uncovering something buried, something that certain people wanted to stay hidden. "Should we stop?" Kiran asked, his voice quieter than usual. "Maybe it's not our fight anymore." Sundar shook his head gently. "It's exactly our fight. This letter, it proves we're getting close to something important, something they're afraid of. And when people are afraid, they try to silence others. We can't let that happen." But he also knew they needed to be smart. Reckless courage wouldn't help anyone. Not Kiran, not Airav, and certainly not the other students whose stories were still hidden behind locked doors and silent hallways. The next morning, Sundar reached out to the school board under a different pretense. He asked to host a community event, an open forum for students, parents, teachers, and administrators to come together and talk openly about the culture in the school. The board was hesitant. One member even called it unnecessary publicity, but Sundar remained calm. "This isn't about publicity," he said. "This is about healing. And if the school truly stands for the students, you'll allow their voices to be heard." They agreed reluctantly, but only under the condition that the event would be closed to media and would remain internal. That was enough for Sundar. Meanwhile, Kiran and Airav worked together on a short video they planned to show at the event. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was simple. Just a montage of real voices, real students talking about the things they were afraid to say out loud. One by one, students recorded messages. "I feel invisible every day. People act nice, then laugh behind my back. I've seen teachers ignore it like they don't want to get involved. I thought I was the only one." Kiran's own message was quiet but powerful. "I didn't ask to be different. I didn't ask for attention. I just wanted to belong." Airav's message came last. His voice cracked in places, but he didn't cut the recording. "They broke my trust. They made me hate the sound of laughter because I never knew if it was at me. But I'm still here. And I want to speak." When Sundar watched the final cut of the video, he felt something tighten in his chest. Not just sadness, but hope. Raw, unfiltered hope. It was the kind of truth that didn't need a fancy presentation. It just needed to be heard. The night of the event, the school auditorium was packed. Students fidgeted in their seats. Teachers stood along the back wall, arms crossed. Some parents whispered quietly. Others looked anxious, unsure of what to expect. The air buzzed with tension. Sundar stepped onto the stage, not with slides or charts, but with nothing more than a microphone and a steady voice. "Thank you for being here tonight," he began. "I'm not here as a tech leader. I'm here as a father, a listener, and someone who believes that silence is not the same as peace." He paused, letting the words settle. Too often we mistake quiet for safety. We tell ourselves that if no one's screaming, everything must be fine. But behind that silence, there's pain, there's fear, and there's a longing to be seen. Then he nodded toward the back of the room. The lights dimmed, and the video began to play. At first there was silence. Some students looked down, others shifted uncomfortably. But as the voices filled the room, honest, trembling, unfiltered, the discomfort gave way to recognition. Eyes widened, heads turned. A few students covered their mouths. A teacher wiped her eyes. When the video ended, the room stayed quiet. Not because no one had anything to say, but because no one wanted to be the first to break the silence. Until a voice rose from the middle row. "That was me," a girl said, standing slowly. The second voice. "I never told anyone. Not even my parents." A boy in the back followed. "I laughed at people like Irav, not because I hated him, but because I was scared someone would laugh at me too." A third voice spoke, then a fourth. Soon the room was alive with voices. Real, trembling, brave, not shouting, not blaming, just speaking. The principal tried to take control, suggesting the forum had run too long. But Sundar gently stepped forward again. "We're just getting started," he said. "Tonight isn't the end, it's the beginning." Later, as the room cleared and students trickled out in small groups, something unexpected happened. Arav approached the principal. They spoke quietly for a moment. Then the principal extended his hand. Arav hesitated before shaking it. Outside, Sundar and Kiran stood under the streetlight. For the first time in weeks, Kiran's shoulders were relaxed. "You were right," he said. "The silence is worse than the pain. But once it's broken, it starts to heal." Sundar put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Truth makes people uncomfortable, but that discomfort is where change begins." Just then, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number again. This one was different. "You've started something you can't stop. Ask yourself, who's really responsible?" The message included a file. One image. It was a screenshot of the forum post that had targeted Arav months ago. But the username of the poster was visible this time. Someone had made a mistake, or someone wanted it to be seen now. And when Sundar saw the name, his heart skipped a beat. He recognized it. Not a student, not a bully, but a staff member. The betrayal inside the room felt colder than it should have. Sundar stared at the screen of his phone, the glow highlighting the rigid lines of his face. The name on the screenshot wasn't one he had expected. Not a student, not a troublemaker, not even someone young. It was someone respected, someone trusted. A name that appeared in school emails, event flyers, and on the staff list beside glowing praise from parents and students alike. Mr. Rohan Verma, the school's technology coordinator. Rohan was a friendly face in the school's hallways, known for helping students fix their tablets, organizing coding workshops, and even offering guidance on tech-based science fair projects. He was a mentor to many, including Kiran. Sundar felt the weight of the truth crash down in layers. This wasn't just bullying, it was betrayal. It was abuse of trust from within the very system meant to protect children. And now, everything was different. He didn't tell Kiran right away. Instead, he spent the next morning in silence, rereading the message, double-checking the metadata on the image. It was legitimate. No forgeries, no tricks. The account that had first shared the doctored photo of Arav had been created using a school-verified email address, one assigned to Mr. Verma. That afternoon, Sundar requested a meeting with the school's principal. He didn't bring his legal team. He didn't contact the press. Not yet. This wasn't about retaliation. It was about responsibility. "I need to show you something," Sundar said as he sat down across from the principal. He passed the phone over and waited as the principal's eyes narrowed, scanning the image. That account was used to humiliate a student, and it came from one of your own. The principal looked up, her face pale, her fingers tightening around the phone. "We had no idea. He's been with us for years." "Sometimes that's how it works," Sundar said quietly. "We trust people because they smile, because they help with homework or fix broken screens. But that doesn't mean their intentions are pure." The principal leaned back, visibly shaken. "This is serious. We'll have to investigate." "No," Sundar said calmly. "This isn't the time for delay. If you wait, others might get hurt. Students need to see that." This school takes their safety seriously. You need to act, now. Within hours, Mr. Verma was called into a private meeting. Sundar didn't attend. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. But word began to spread fast. By the next morning, whispers filled the hallways. Students who once felt small began to look around with sharper eyes, asking new questions, wondering who had been silently feeding their fear. Later that evening, Kiran found out. He had just gotten home when he saw the news on the school's internal forum. Staff member suspended pending investigation into inappropriate online behavior. He turned to Sundar stunned. Was it someone we know? Sundar nodded slowly. It was someone you've worked with. Kiran's face shifted. Confusion, then disbelief, then something close to betrayal. But he helped me with my robotics project. He told me I had potential. And he was wrong, Sundar replied. Not about your potential, about thinking no one would ever see behind the mask. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kiran asked the question Sundar had been expecting. So what now? What happens to him? The school is investigating. And if necessary, law, enforcement will get involved. But what happens next isn't just about him, Sundar said. It's about what we do now that the truth is out. The next day, Arav came to their home. His hands were shaking, not out of fear but out of something new. Release. Freedom. The boy who had once drawn only shadows now stood in the light, his eyes brighter than Sundar had ever seen them. I knew someone was behind it, Arav said, but I never imagined it was him. He fooled a lot of people, Sundar replied. But you spoke up. And that changed everything. Arav looked at Kiran, then back at Sundar. We can't let it end here. Not with just one person. What about the systems that allowed it? What about the students who were silent because they thought the school wouldn't protect them? Kiran stepped forward, voice steady. What if we start something? Not just a project, something real, something big. A platform where students can safely share what they're going through, anonymously but with support. Moderated by peers and adults they can trust. Arav's eyes lit up. Like a digital safe space. Run by students, powered by empathy. Sundar smiled. I think you both just started a revolution. Within a week, the idea had become a plan. They called it Echo, a digital platform where every unheard voice could finally find its sound. No names, no judgment, just a space to speak, to connect, to begin again. Kiran and Arav worked side by side, coding late into the night. Sundar helped where he could, offering guidance but letting them lead. He knew this wasn't his story anymore. It belonged to the kids who had suffered in silence and now refused to stay quiet. The day before launch, a message arrived through the newly created Echo platform. I don't know who you are, but I was ready to give up. I watched your video, I cried. I realized I wasn't alone. Thank you. Please don't stop. They didn't know who wrote it. They didn't need to. The message was enough. Proof that Echo mattered. That the pain they had endured had meaning beyond their own scars. But just when things felt steady again, another crack appeared. A new email. No sender. Just one sentence. Mr. Verma wasn't working alone. The final truth, the email was brief. No name, no hint of who had sent it. But the words echoed louder than any headline or speech. Mr. Verma wasn't working alone. Those 6 words broke through the calm that had started to form around Sundar, Kiran, and Arav like a knife through glass. Just when they thought the truth had been revealed, when they believed the silence had been shattered, there it was again. A new layer. A deeper shadow. Sundar sat in his study that night, staring at the message. His reflection shimmered faintly in the laptop screen, surrounded by the faint buzz of the room's silence. He had learned long ago that the truth was rarely simple, but still he hadn't expected it to be this deep, this tangled. If Mr. Verma hadn't acted alone, who else had helped him hurt those kids? Who had stood behind the curtain, pulling strings, staying silent while others suffered? He started digging. Not like a CEO this time, but like a father. like a man who had decided that comfort was never more important than justice. He reviewed old forum data, internal school communications, even public yearbooks and staff directories. He wasn't searching for evidence, he was searching for patterns. And then slowly a name kept surfacing. Not in obvious ways, not with aggression or hate, but with small, consistent signs of influence. Someone always present when things happened. Someone who never raised a hand but always had a seat at the table. Vice Principal Mara. She was known for her strict tone and tidy appearance. She rarely smiled but was respected by teachers and feared by students. She had a reputation for keeping things in order, which, Sundar realized now, often meant quietly making things disappear. He recalled her silence at the open forum, how she stood in the back, arms folded, not reacting as voices shook the walls. Now, it made sense. She wasn't surprised. She had seen the cracks before, and instead of repairing them, she had helped hide them. Sundar didn't confront her right away. Instead, he met with the school principal again and laid out what he had found. Email timestamps, patterns of disciplinary reports that disappeared, complaints that were never followed up. The principal was shaken. This time, she didn't ask for patience. She asked for help. 2 days later, an emergency board meeting was held behind closed doors. Staff were interviewed. Files were reviewed. A pattern emerged. Cases of bullying that had been dismissed without record. Students who had asked for help and been told to stay quiet. Even a parent who had once complained and then mysteriously withdrawn their child without explanation. All roads led back to the same desk, Vice Principal Mehra. The board acted swiftly. She was placed on leave. The principal stood before the entire student body that afternoon and gave a public statement, her voice steady but emotional. "We failed some of you, and for that, I am deeply sorry. This school promised to protect you. Instead, it protected itself. That ends now." Students listened in stunned silence. Some of them cried, not because of grief, but because they finally felt seen. That evening, Sundar, Kiran, and Arav met in the park where it all began, where Kiran had once sat on a bench after school, alone and hurting, pretending he was fine. Now he stood tall, his posture straight, his voice stronger. "Do you think it's really over?" Arav asked. Sundar didn't answer right away. He looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted slowly above, painted by the fading colors of sunset. "The truth doesn't end things," he said finally. "It begins them." "So what happens next?" Kiran asked. "Next," Sundar said with a quiet smile, "we build something better." The next few weeks changed everything.